Hello writers, come write with me. My name is Mykela Greenwood. I create worlds for mind adventures. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Write with Mykela. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell so you can go on this journey with me. Excuse me. Before we get into today's video, I want to remind you that Nano Wrimo started Wednesday, November 1st, and today is the 17th day. So leave a comment on the word count you have so far. If you haven't written for today, then just leave your word count for November 1st through November 16th. We're about halfway through the month, a little over halfway. So hopefully you have half of your 50,000 words. Now, today is Friday, which is story time, or the day of our chapter exchange. Excuse me. If you're writing with me and you wish to exchange chapters, then send your chapter with written permission to writewithmykela@gmail.com. I will post the email address at the end of the video. At least that's what I normally do. Now, Microsoft Word took off my program. I had to learn a new program. But I should be able to do that or post it below if I can't. I'm looking forward to reading your chapters, even if I can't read them all on the channel. All chapters read on Fridays, whether they are mine or another writer's work, are copyright protected material. No one may use any part in writing their own stories. This story that we're reading today is also PG-13, so if you are under 13 years of age, you need parental guidance. The story is in its rough draft stage, just as the last story we heard. The title of the story is Tajiia, and today we are reading chapter 15. If you would like to read along, then send to the email I stated earlier and request a PDF of the chapter. Make sure you are specific about either City of the Ancients or Tajiia, which chapter. Now let's start. Chapter 15, Healing and Testing. A couple of hours later, the group finally arrived at the mountain and Autor took the lead. He started asking people to do different things, while Arshwaya took Tajiia to where she needed to put down the meeting tree. After Tajiia put it down and several people entered, Arshwaya gasped upon seeing the olive tree. Where did this come from? She turned and looked at Tajiia. I found it when I was looking for herbs for the witches and the warlock who were poisoned, replied Tajiia. Helbob came out and said, once you show me a cauldron, I will help you make the medicine. Arshwaya gasped again as several others also gasped. They knew prophecy was indeed coming true. Tharkek and I will get a cauldron, stated Raisler, and the two headed off with a couple more following behind. It wasn't long before they had the cauldron brewing with the antidote to the poison, and Arshwaya reassured Tajiia that someone would take care of those people. Then several gathered around Tajiia to show her the different parts of the mountain and show her the protections. But Chancellor Wycarl said, no. I want her to take at least a few queen tests, Chancellor Wycarl stated. Tajiia sighed and rolled her eyes. More of this stuff that I'm not told the rules until after I break them? Chancellor Wycarl chuckled. No, I will tell rules as we go. Before the first test, many people filed into the chamber, and the chamber expanded to accommodate them all. They had set up traps and alerts, so now was just a waiting game, and no one wanted to miss Tajiia taking her test. There were a series of tests to take. Some of the queens had already taken some of the series of tests. Some of the tests, of the higher queens like Arshwaya and Phaedra had passed, but other queens hadn't. The chancellors would also give those who hadn't passed an opportunity to take those tests. Then there were tests that Arshwaya hadn't passed. Basically, there were 144 tests at present for the Grand Queen. Arshwaya had passed 96 of those, so her next test would be the 97th one. To no longer need a mentor, a witch, wizard, or warlock had to pass 12, but the chancellors were already discussing more. To be a mentor, one had to pass 24 tests. To be a queen, it was double that, so 48 tests. Still, the chancellors were discussing more, especially since they were discussing to increase the number of total tests. Tajiia had passed 37 tests on her first night with the group, so she needed to pass at least 11 more to be a queen. With the magic everyone had already seen her perform, no one was worried about her passing. Balak and several others hoped to see other people taking the test too, because they remembered some of Tajiia's first tests, and they wanted to see how she would try to pass these tests, as opposed to the other people. Many of the witch community had heard various rumors about Tajiia's first test, and they wanted to witness things themselves. Chancellor Wykral said they would do the first 11 tests and then check on the progress of the soldiers and the potion. If things were fine, then they would do more tests. Everyone understood, so he read the rules for the 38th test. This test is an important one. The person needs to be able to blend himself or herself in with his surroundings. Example, if you're hiding in bushes or behind a tree, you must look like a bush or a tree. If the person testing can also spread this blending to others, then that is a higher pass rate. Chancellor Wykral paused and thought about things. From the experience they just had in the woods, this had been an essential skill. But Tajiia hadn't used it. What she did was better, and he was thinking of dismissing this test for her. But Raisler spoke up and said, "Do you understand blending, Tajiia? It is not the same as changing your form to the bush. It is not becoming invisible inside the bush or small as a grain of dirt beneath the bush." At this, Hellbob cocked his head to the side. He thought how any of those things might be as good, if not better, than just blending with bush. "Does it have to be a bush?" asked Tajiia. "No," answered Chancellor Wykral. "Usually someone can still make you out if they know what to look for or if you're not still," stated Arshwaya. Tajiia invited the squirrel to get on her shoulder as she walked. Excuse me. My breathing is off today. Tajiia invited the squirrel to get on her shoulder as she walked in between the candle and the podium and said the words that she thought would pass the test. Tharkek immediately walked back and forth in front of the stage. "Not invisible. I think I can see her." "Tajiia, move a little," stated Arshwaya as she got closer to look too. Tajiia moved a little by pulling her dress out to the side and curtsying. But her spell made her blend in with her background from whichever side someone viewed her from, so the part of her that extended beyond the side of the podium looked like the back of the stage. However, Arshwaya and Tharkek both saw the slight movement. They also saw the squirrel swish his tail at the same time. Shaful called out, "We want to hear her words." "That's not part of the test," stated Chancellor Wykral. "Tajiia will teach us after we handle the soldiers," stated Arshwaya. "But that would help us against the soldiers," stated Tola. "I agree," said Telka. "I'd rather be a squirrel," stated Balak. "You won't be fighting," put in Autor. "This spell is better than mine. It would help me sneak up on the soldiers." "No answers to tests are given during testing times," said Chancellor Adjington as he walked to the front to look at Tajiia as she blended in with her background. "But certainly after the test time is done, we want the words to this spell." Several other chancellors walked up to look. One of them said, "This is a higher pass rate than normal. Even the squirrel is hard to see." At that, Tajiia dropped the spell and turned to Chancellor Wadcrawl and said, "I like him." Chancellor Wadcrawl laughed a little, and they proceeded with the testing. After a couple hours, and after Tajiia had passed the 48th test, they exited the meeting chamber and went out to check on things in the mountain. There were many hushed conversations in the halls as they walked to their various posts. Tharkek, Raisler, and Artur showed Tajiia around for a bit, and then they let her exit the mountain pass to check on her air walls. Tajiia told them the second set of soldiers had caught up quite a bit, but they weren't together yet. Then someone suggested that the second group might stop like the first group did when they went through the air wall that made them small. They went back to the meeting chamber. The potion against the poison was ready and given to those who needed it. They started tests again. There were many discussions after many of Tajiia's tests. And after her 60th test, the Chancellor said that was enough for the night. The group of soldiers that was behind Tajiia's group, or nearest Tajiia's group, changed back to the normal size. The sudden appearance startled the ones that hadn't changed size, but they quickly remembered the commander's threats and decided to continue on. The commanders decided that since they had rested so much, they could march throughout the night. While the second group of soldiers hadn't seen the magic in the woods concerning the dog fights or the handler's faces changing to look like a warlock's face, they had experienced a great deal of magic throughout the magical protections, so they became guarded when they saw Waggler's face on many comrades or other known faces of warlocks on comrades. But they didn't necessarily think the protection area was only in the villages. So they cast wary glances, but they kept marching on. The second group of soldiers was making good time and was doing quite well with catching up with the first group. Although the two groups didn't know the location of the other, the first group thought King Pomodestone had stationed the second group in the villages, and the second group thought the first group was hunting down the witches and warlocks in the woods around Village 11. The second group had long days and marched into the night every night. The biggest thing that slowed them down were the houses, trees, or other such things that they had to go around. Their lines had started fairly straight, but had bent and curved a lot the first couple of days, and they would gather into more consolidated unit once they came to where the two rivers split from the North River. Mykela found Tajiia in the early morning. She found her on the mountain path and not in the mountain. Tajiia was sitting quietly on a rock. Mykela sat beside her. After a few minutes, Mykela asked Tajiia what was up. Tajiia asked her mom why the soldiers were loyal to King Pomodestone when the king was doing such horrible things. Mykela answered that some were scared of him. Some believed King Pomodestone that witches were vile beings, and some liked the power of being a soldier, huntsman, or handler. Tajiia thought on her mother's words for a moment and then said, "They should know that when the animals help us as much as they have, then something is really wrong." "I'm not sure the soldiers know the animals have helped us," replied Mykela. Then Mykela got up and left her daughter to whatever she was doing at the moment. Many wanted Tajiia to come in and continue with her test, but none disturbed her. Around noon, Tajiia went into the meeting chamber and reported to Artur that the two groups seemed to be about a day apart, but the second group was now small. Tokrel listened with interest. Then she asked around how Tajiia knew that. Finally, she asked Ozzy, and Ozzy explained how her cousin walked into Tajiia's first air wall, or at least the first one they knew about. Ozzy and Allah told of all the things that happened after that. When Ozzy was telling about Bollock spraying through the wall as pieces of wood, she started laughing too hard to continue, so Alla finished the story. Tajiia took more tests until she had passed 72 tests. Phaedra sighed, and her group around her noticed. They asked what was up. She told them that she had passed 72 tests and had taken the 73rd one at least 3 times, if not 5. Fannel spoke up and said he knew she was glad she was here to watch Tajiia, and she might get more ideas or courage from watching Tajiia. Phaedra knew he was right, but she hadn't thought on the 73rd test in a couple of years. But the chancellors were calling on people to take their posts or to sleep so they could take posts later. After Artur spoke with Tajiia, he felt the soldiers might enter the mountain pass at dark, or at least be close enough to do so. He didn't know if they would or not. Okay, writers, that was a fairly short chapter, and I'm sure some of you want to know about the test. You want to know more about the test Tajiia took. I might add a few more tests when I do another edit run, but remember that the event needs to be interrelated as much as possible. So yes, magic and tests are interesting, but it needs to be something Tajiia can use in battle, or something the witching community used on the trip. Moreover, Helbub was thinking what Tajiia did was better than the 38th test required, and Chancellor Wycart was almost dismissing the test. So why would I put that in? How is that now connecting when it seems like it's not important? Well, you know that the group leaders were trying to blend in their groups. And trying to blend their groups in. And you know that the chancellors are discussing adding more tests. Now the reader can see the need for more tests. The reader can see that the current tests aren't sufficient. How would have the people from the witching community been able to escape the soldiers with the dogs with such spells as just blending? They needed Tajiia and her magic and her spells. At the same time, this is a group, and everyone in the group has to go through certain things to be a member. So it's not like we could just ditch a test. We have to go through everything. So remember, Alla couldn't light the flame at first. She was very disappointed, but she had, she could do it again at 12 months and at 13 months. She couldn't light the flame, but they would give her another chance. And she was happy. She was very happy when her spell worked because she knew she could stay in the group. So there's certain things you need to do to be part of a group. So that's one of the reasons that I included it. But another was so that you could see what we needed to add. They don't have invisibility. They hadn't done invisibility in a century or so, as stated somewhere in the book, how long it had been. And some of them hadn't even heard about it. They could go small, but they were dwarf size and not ant size. So all these spells that Tajiia does, the reader can see a comparison, invisibility versus blending, what they were doing. So they can see the need for more tests or better tests and stuff like that, especially if somebody's going to be a mentor and try to help protect a student. That's a mentor's job too. It's not just teaching, but protecting the student and stuff. But leave a comment below on what type of magic test you would put in if this were your story. What would the chancellor have Tajiia do, and how would she break the rules to do the test like she did with the flame? She had the flame just jump over to the candle instead of creating the flame. And some people were like, that's cheating, she didn't pass. So, leave a comment on what magic test you would have her do and how would she pass. If you want to be, you can just say the test. But if you want to be a little bit more, you can say how you would have her pass the test. Join me Tuesday for dangling modifiers or dangling participles and antonyms. Join me Friday for chapter 16 of Tajiia Elephantine. Visit my website, bymykela.com, and read some character bios. leave a comment below on which characters on the website are your favorites so far. I hope you're enjoying writing your stories as much as I am. Don't forget to share your stories by sending them to writewithmykela@gmail.com. That's the chapter exchange part. When you share your chapters with me, no polishing is required. And I'm going to talk to y'all one day about the rough draft that we have seen, like with City of the Ancients and this, and kind of explain or give an analogy of how it is a rough draft so that y'all can have a more clear view of it. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and the bell so we can continue to write together. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your participation. If you know someone who would like this video, then please share it with them. This is Mykela with Write with Mykela. Bye for now.